Hi, everyone. Welcome to Soul Speak. I'm Talya Pardo. I'm an editor, life coach, intuitive mentor, author, and I'm here today with Maryna Ninovska. Did I say that right? Ninovska.
Perfect.
Beautiful. She is a rebirth doula, self-mastery coach, specializing in inner child work and shadow work, inner child therapy and shadow work. You're also an international bestseller because we were co-authors on the Jaguar Medicine book, which is where we met, and it was so exciting to do that. It was really opened my world for me. I know it brought so many incredible women together. And so, it's also birthing beautiful things from that one endeavor, right? So in Soul Speak, we talk about soul stories and people's lives and the journeys that they take. And I loved having our conversation and listening to the journey that your soul has been on in this lifetime. And really, you're an incredible testament to courage and fortitude. And the word, it's not overcoming, because it's more than that. It's you're thriving, and you're really incredibly vibrant with everything that you're bringing to the world. So I'd like you to share that with our audience. If you can start by just telling us a little bit of, who you are, what kind of journey you've been on, and where that's brought you to.
Certainly. Okay, yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It was so amazing to meet you and so many other amazing women by coming together for Jaguar Medicine and getting our stories out that way. And I'm so excited to share some of that here today. In a nutshell, yes, I'm a self-mastery mentor. I specialize in trauma-centric shadow work and inner child therapy. And I basically offer really intimate transformational containers in a one-on-one setting for bold-hearted women pursuing self-mastery and self-actualization. And we go about this kind of pursuit and healing by basically analyzing all of your limiting and disempowering behavioral tendencies, relating tactics, coping mechanisms, and addictions today. And we do the backwards investigation process to identify what must have happened to you in the past, because everything about who we are today is a mirror of what we have undergone in our earlier years through childhood trauma, conditioning, socialization, whatever the case was. And in order to break these tendencies and habits in the now, we must go back to the past and to better integrate what had taken place and basically work on dissolving the trauma that had occurred to influence you to be this certain way and believe these certain limiting things, by dissolving it out of your central nervous system, your cell memory in your body, and ultimately your subconscious mind. So basically, it's supporting people who want to experience limitless living in their inner world and in their external reality, and teaching them the tools and how to pursue the work effectively so their past no longer holds as much weight and keeps them locked into what they had gone through in the present. In a nutshell.
That's a lot, right? You're encompassing the whole entire person. And your work, you combine the physical work with emotional work. Is that right? Like, so take us through the process you would go through with someone from start to finish, right? Like you would, and I don't know if there ever a finish, right? Like you can heal through so much, and the trigger, the wound is still there. You don't forget what happened. It's really to be able to shift out of it having such a negative impact on you, and the way you interact with the world, and the way you interact with your life, with yourself. But it's still always there. And I think that there are people sometimes out there who feel like they just want to cut it off, right? And be able to say like it never happened, and that's almost destructive, right? It's an integrative healing that incorporates that wound back into yourself, but heals it, right?
Exactly. Yeah. We're learning how to relate to our past and our pain differently, and how to show up for ourselves on a regular basis so we're no longer perpetuating the abuse that we went through, or the neglect or the pain that we went through, in the way that we now treat ourselves. Because oftentimes if we, let's say in the notion of, let's say you had actual like childhood abuse, whether it was psychological or emotional. As children, when we go through that, we internalize that. And even when we're long out of that situation, we continue to do the same unto ourselves because of the beliefs created there. So most survivors of abuse or any kind of trauma, we create limiting self-perception in those situations, meaning limiting beliefs about our worth, our deservingness, and who we are and what we're capable of. And then we hold on to those beliefs for the rest of time unless we do this kind of subconscious reprogramming work in the now. So if we are still carrying disempowering beliefs that we generated due to painful situations in the past, then we're still running our lives to reflect those beliefs. So let's say we experienced a bunch of abuse. From our limited perception as a child, we made it mean that that must mean we're actually worthless, or something's always wrong with us, or things just never work out, whether that was a belief about us, the world, or other people. And then today we're going to continue to live in a way that reaffirms those beliefs. So we take less chances, we don't pursue our dreams, and we continue to get stuck in an inner narrative of, you know, like, I'm not worthy of X or whatever.
We're almost continually traumatizing ourselves, right? It's what I've learned, and you'll tell me if you see this or if this is part of your practice as well, is that, you know, the inner child and you know, the ego, which is the protective shell, you know, as much as it's painful, this is what it knows to be true, you know, and I'm using quotation marks. And so the ego strives to maintain the familiar, even if it's damaging to us. So we maintain this inner narrative. We perpetuate the same patterns in our lives, not because it feels good and not because it's good for us, but it's because it's what we know. It's like the devil you know, as opposed to the devil you don't. And often, you know, people who have been through the healing process, when they enter into healthy relationships or a healthier lifestyle, in the beginning, and I can, like, my own personal experience in my relationship, in the beginning, like, calm and happy stresses me out. It used to, way more, right now, not so much anymore, but it used to make me very nervous. And what would happen is I would instigate an unhealthy incident, right? Because that's what my ego is searching for, because those emotions of lack of safety or lack of worth or pain, just hurt, right? Betrayal, abandonment, all of that it's what I know. So when that is absent, even if it's absent because you're in a better space and a healthier space, it feels strange. It feels uncomfortable. It's hard to accept it because it's too unfamiliar. So it feels unsafe. So part of that healing is to get yourself into a place where, you know, like, okay, it's my ego telling, you know, the alarm bells going off are not because something bad is happening, but it's just because it's different from what I know, which was so much pain.
Oh my gosh, exactly. It's like we get addicted to chaos if chaos was our regular environment in the past. And so then it's like, let's keep recreating chaos so we feel at home in our bodies and in the situation. And then also, like, exactly what you're saying there. It's like we look to repeat the past because it's known. And then ultimately, like, every single behavior or way of being that we portray today is just most often a survival strategy from the past that is now expired. So it's like it gets the job done, right? It still gets our needs met. It keeps us safe, ensures that we're lovable. However, because we built that survival strategy at a young age without, you know, any wisdom or experience or alternative options to choose from,
that's right.
We just keep repeating it until now as adults we get to intervene and be like, oh shit, this is creating more harm than good.
Yeah.
What's a different way that I can be in these kind of situations, protect myself, get my needs met, instead of continuing to do this behavior that ultimately creates more damage than actually serves me and other people? And then, like, we go to the root cause, because unless we tend to the trauma from which that the survival strategy was born from, the subconscious isn't going to feel safe enough to ever let it go. So you can say a million affirmations, try to change your habits, blah, blah, blah. It's not going to work, because your inner child and your subconscious and your nervous system won't feel safe enough to let it go until you go and tend to all the repressed emotions around what happened to you in the past that keeps encouraging you and motivating you to keep repeating the same survival strategy. Does that make sense, kind of like in a nutshell when we think of it
Absolutely.
tactically?
So when you're working with your clients in the inner child therapy, what kind of processes do you go through with them? Do you have them do visualization with their inner child, conversations with their inner child? What's the process?
Definitely. Like when we're in the container together, usually like we will do that like psychoanalysis at first by them just sharing like some issues they're experiencing in their life right now. Maybe there's some like relationship friction going on with either their partner or a best friend or one of their parents. Maybe
Right.
they're experiencing some kind of insecurity that keeps taking center stage. Maybe they find themselves constantly like sabotaging progress in a project they're working on, or some kind of lifestyle change that they're trying to pursue. And then we're like, oh, what's actually going on in the background?
Right.
And then I can usually start helping them connect the dots as to like what usually happens in childhood that makes someone the way that they are right now. And so we start to like kind of like illuminate their different reasons someone could behave the way that they do. And then they start to like create better understanding of like what must have happened to them to become this way. So like that's more of like the heady stuff where like illuminating what must have taken place then for you to be this way now. And that creates a shift in itself because awareness is the first step to transformation. And then we would go in to do the body work, which is Theta healing base. So we get them into the Theta brainwave, which is like a mild hypnosis.
Okay.
And then we either go into like an identified disempowering core belief that I've been able to like scope out based on what they presented to me. And then they would go into like a visualization of that core belief. And then we would find all the repressed emotions associated with that belief. And then we would feel through them one by one. So basically, like they would be taught how to come back into their body during fight or flight or pain that they experienced in that event by seeing it, or their visualization of this belief being true. And then I would go in and help them move that energy while they feel that emotion fully.
So are they doing that in, like you said, a mild hypnosis? Is that like is that an extreme form of relaxation and meditation? Like how do you achieve that theta state in the brain?
Yeah, definitely. It's just a matter of like soothing the nervous system. So like really deep belly breaths, like the vagus nerve stimulating breaths.
Yes.
And just like a gentle meditative experience to help them like ground into their physical body just by focusing on different parts of their physical vessel and continuously like following their breath and just really landing in the now. And then when they're like fully relaxed and like in a melted state, then we start speaking to the subconscious directly. And like, so there's many different ways that I would go about accessing certain information because, okay, take a step back. A lot of people don't have the exact memories of what happened to them. And
that's what I was going to say, actually, because a lot of people don't. It's a vague knowing of how you feel, but there's not necessarily always one massive event that created that, right? Like, especially in childhood, if you're growing up in a household where there's general chaos every day, right? Or one parent or both, but a certain personalities in our lives where it's their continuous behavior towards us. So it's not one, it's the overall feeling, or it's the overall dynamic that you've grown up with that has created the trauma or the beliefs, the limiting beliefs.
Exactly. Like, so oftentimes when there's like no memory, but it's clear what their core belief is, then we go in through the avenue of like asking their subconscious to present a visual representation of them living out that belief right now. Because we're just trying to access the repressed emotions that you never dealt with in the past, which is the glue that keeps the belief locked into place and you addicted to playing out this tendency. And then we would find those emotions in the body. So basically I teach them like visceral connection to themselves, and it'll come through intuitively. It'll be like a pain in your hip coming up or like a tingling in your knee. And then we bring all of our awareness there and start like feeling through it real time. And then I move the energy simultaneously. And then
parts of the
No,
body,
sorry,
sorry to cut you out, different parts of the body necessarily relate to various issues, family members, kinds of types of event. Like I've spoken to mentors where it's like your lower back. Well, that links to, I forget even what she associated it with. Oh, my mother or something like that, you know? So it helps direct you or navigate you towards what the issue may be, even if the client doesn't have such a clear vision on it.
I totally hear you with that. And I've dabbled in that in the past, but I honestly think it's actually so subjective. I would never say that one thing that someone carries in their heart is the same thing that someone else would carry.
You're right.
In their heart too. Like I've never experienced like for there to be a theme, but I have read a ton of books like, oh, your shoulders means the weight of the world on your shoulders. Your womb is sexual trauma. Like,
yeah, I agree that it's subjective. It's kind of like, it's like a guidebook, right? Like if it resonates with you, amazing, because the whole purpose is not about locking in the representations. The purpose is to guide you towards healing the wound, right? And identifying it and getting the awareness. So however you get there, if it resonates and works for you, then fantastic, right? I mean,
and oftentimes when you're going to this work, you're like setting in an intention to create healing in your life, right? And then things start to bubble up on their own. Like even in our conversation, like at the beginning, like, yeah, I don't remember anything. I don't think it was that bad. And then I'd share some examples. Maybe I'd share some of my story. And then they'd be like, oh, actually, like I did go through a lot of that and it really sucked, but I didn't even notice because again, it was so automatic. It was like my lifestyle. I didn't know that there was any different or any better. So it's just
right. Sometimes we don't even know that there was something so wrong, wrong or damaging about it. But also sometimes we've incorporated into like, that's what it was. We block off the impact, what we think is and we just like put it aside. And so we stop even having it as a reference point when we try to reflect back. And there are many times you can say, oh, well, I had a good childhood, things were good, and they may have been. And then you, like you say, you can be sparked to think of something and go like, actually, that was something that I tried to avoid, or that really bothered me, but I moved away from it, so definitely there are things that we don't even realize have impacted us.
exactly. So like the whole point of this work is like to educate that trauma isn't the event. Like we talked about before too. Oh no. Oh, you're a little bit frozen there too. Let me just double check here. Oh, interweb is good. Okay, I'll just wait for you to let me know.
Oh, and she's back. Okay. We had a 2-second technical, you know what? April 4th. I was saying to somebody else I was speaking to today, I was reading that there's something like celestially heavenly bodies that today is going to be a day, a day of struggle, a day of challenge. And so we had a little technical challenge there. Okay, continue.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I think it's the whole like Schumann resonance and solar flare storm jazz.
It's true. We've got the solar flares going. There's also some planetary movements that are today that I don't even remember, because we've talked, we mentioned that quickly, the interest in astrology, but for me, it never stays in my head. I love to learn about it, but the connections don't happen. I need somebody else to always bring it to me. So, but yeah, today there was supposed to be something big. Vaguely.
We're doing the thing though. Such as technical life. Oh no, frozen again. That's okay. We'll give it a minute.
Oh, is she back again? Okay, let's keep trying. We're not giving up. So yeah, so the realization of the impact that things have had on our lives later on, sometimes it's just kind of like you'll realize one thing and it all of a sudden connects the dots for so many things that have been your challenge throughout your life, which is quite a breakthrough in the end.
Totally. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. I was like, what were we on before that? It's just like, yeah, the bigger, there's like such a big educational component actually, because it's like until we understand what trauma is, we don't really understand that we've been traumatized. And
Exactly.
so like, I think as society, we've been so held back because like all we have been taught is that trauma equals like tragedy. Trauma is a car accident. Trauma is murder.
Yes,
Trauma is rape. When like
that's right.
really there's so many ways to be traumatized, because it doesn't matter like what it was, it's how you felt about yourself and the world as a result of what happened. And that is the scar that gets left behind. And that's what we're dealing with.
Right. And sometimes it's not even necessarily, like you say, something so traumatic. And it's not in any way to minimize or gaslight. It's just about, it's to recognize our perception of things and the way we internalized it towards ourselves. So that's why it's important to really have compassion, I think, and understanding for everybody's story, because what we might not consider to have been so traumatic, right? It might be easy to brush off. For another person, in the kind of nature that they have, and the sensitivity that they might have, to them, that's a traumatic experience, and it became traumatic in how they then internalized it.
Totally. And like, I'd love to even like give an example, because I've experienced a lot of exactly that when I've used to share some of my trauma with friends. And I get why they didn't understand that it was traumatic, because again, we're missing the education, right? So
Yeah.
like, I moved from Ukraine to Canada when I was 7 years old, and it was out of the blue. Like, my parents just woke me up one morning in July. I was 7. They like got me dressed, put some stuff in my backpack, and then they just like led me
Right.
out the front door and into a white van and
Oh my
shut the door,
goodness.
told me to go to sleep.
Oh, so there was no involving you in that process. And in one way, understandable. 7-year-old is 7, right? There's how much adult talk is there going to be with the 7-year-old explaining, but some minimal, we're going on a trip, we're going to a new place, something to give the person or the child some kind of anticipation of what's to come, so that they can brace themselves, as opposed to just being taken along for the ride.
Exactly. And I just remember, like, yeah, we arrived in Poland, got on a plane. I mean, I've never been on a plane before. And I just remember like
Awesome.
throwing up the whole way. It was like
Oh,
a
goodness.
10-hour flight, because I thought we were going to crash into a mountain. I was so
Oh
scared
my
and
God.
so naive. And then we landed there. And then, I mean, okay, like how it worked then, even though we came on a professional visa, you basically have to have like a lump sum of money when you arrive, and then you're basically like on your own. And
Wow. Yeah.
so my parents' English was still, you know, mediocre. I had no English. And then right from the beginning, they were like in full blown scarcity mode.
Right.
And
Sure.
in a nutshell, like we literally moved every single year of my life, meaning
Oh,
moving schools. I was
right.
always the new kid. I was
Oh,
always the outsider. Nobody ever wanted to be my friend, and I couldn't even
oh,
speak the language.
oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
And when
That is traumatic. There's
right?
no there's no minimizing of that on such a young child. That's incredible.
And
Wow.
even like immigration too, is just like, as children, like even maybe when things aren't clicking up here yet because we don't have life experience, we know and feel that like probably never going to see my family again. I
Yeah.
don't know anything or anyone here. I didn't even know what Canada was. Like, I haven't even
Yeah.
seen that
There's
on a
nothing
globe.
familiar whatsoever. The food's not familiar. The buildings don't look familiar. Everything looks different. You're like brought to another world, literally, with no
Exactly.
real explanation or support for it. So, wow, you
And
you were given challenges right from the beginning, Maryna.
And even like when we got here, like again, because we were moving and my parents were having a really hard time finding a job, like no resources, none of their education was actually recognized or accredited here, even though they're both engineers.
Oh my
Like, you know what I mean? They had to
yeah,
start from scratch and things weren't
that's
working out. And we even came down to our last $1,000.
wow.
And
Wow.
like, of course, as children too, we're so sensitive. We're still so connected to our soul. We're picking up on stuff everywhere, not just as
Absolutely.
sponges for beliefs, but also like everyone's energy. It's just so much more
Absolutely.
apparent and intense. And I was always like in the middle of like this vortex of my mom freaking out, my dad stressing, like
Oh,
they would like have a lot of anger, like
sure,
just
sure.
towards each other and the situation. So, like, I guess for the example's sake, it's like from a very young age, I felt like life wasn't safe because everything was
For
always
sure.
unpredictable. Like, I
Yeah.
would get dropped off at schools and not know when I'm going to get picked up, where the hell I am. I couldn't
Oh
even
my
leave. I
God.
couldn't understand anything. Nobody can understand me. Like,
Oh my goodness. Oh my
like that
goodness.
leaves
Yeah.
like such a
I just
mark.
want to give your little girl, your inner little girl, a big hug. Like, I just want to hold her and go, like, you are okay. Wow, you were really put through incredible challenges. And that's, I can see there's abandonment trauma, there's neglect, there's so much there that you were saddled with right from the beginning that,
And people
yeah.
and like people don't like understand, right, that this is trauma. Oftentimes they're like,
Yeah.
oh, you move schools all the time, cool, like, you know what I mean? Oh,
Right.
you moved countries, that must have been an adventure, that's fun. When like actually what happened to me on the inside was
Yes.
like I didn't have any security, no stability, felt like I couldn't count on anyone because my parents were always too busy just trying to make ends
Sure.
meet. And I was constantly put into emotionally dangerous situations where no one would like me, no one would want me. And I
Yeah.
was like literally left out. So the scarring and the trauma that actually happened is that, like, again, like
That's
I'm
intense.
unlovable.
Right.
Like I'm a
Yep.
burden. Like
Yeah.
I'm an outsider. I don't belong. This is what core wounds actually look like.
Yeah. That's huge. That's huge. And to have brought yourself to a place where you've not only worked so hard on healing that, but you're helping others heal those wounds is incredible. That you could bring yourself to that kind of place where you have the awareness, you've found a way to bring yourself to those skills and create a practice to bring to others to share that kind of healing ability, which is just outstanding to see. We talk a lot about, healing through challenge and healing through pain, but you're taking it to another level because you've gone through intense pain, but you're bringing your healing to the outside world. You're not just healing yourself.
Oh, thank you. I just know that like it's part of my mission to be like a post-traumatic growth advocate. So it's really
Right.
important for me to share with other people that like trust me. Like trust me. No matter what you've gone through and how much of it, because that was just like the tip of the iceberg for me.
Mhm.
Recovery and healing is possible, and you
Right.
can ultimately decide who you will be, who you are, and where your life is going, no matter what you could have survived or endured in the past. Like it's all possible. Because if it was possible for me, it's
Right.
definitely possible for anyone and everyone. And I hope that's all that people really take away from these conversations.
Right. Well, and that's it. And I think that when we're working with clients, and coach is it's a generic term because there's so much more to what we do, but it's so important for them to understand that we're not bringing this because, it's something we learned in a textbook. We're bringing this because we actually went through this process ourselves and have brought ourselves to a new life, essentially, right? Like we've rebirthed ourselves into our life purpose. And so it takes an incredible courage and it takes incredible inner strength that I think a lot of people don't even realize they have. And I think it's also something that you need to build, right? You may not always start off so internally strong, but as you go through this process, you learn your resiliency, you see what you're surviving, and then how you're pulling yourself through it and realizing like I can get through this. So the strength builds itself. It's like exercising, right? In the sense of like you can start out really out of shape and have no muscle tone and very very slowly it takes the determination and the self-discipline, right? And the vision to know where you want to get to or at least just know that you want to do something to make things better for yourself, right? And the more you work at it slowly, you build those muscles till one day you're kind of like, hey, I'm okay. I'm over here, and that, yeah, my ankle still bothers me from the time I broke it on, wherever, but it's stronger now, that, and I can run, or I can jump. It's
Ooh,
funny. I
yeah.
think I just made that analogy, and it actually is really personal because I broke my foot 2 years ago, and that's been one of my kind of big parts of my story, because the surgery made me be it made me immobilized for a good 3 months, because I had to put in pins and metal, and I had walked, because I had broken it but didn't believe that I broke it, so I refused to check it out, and instead was trying to be the super mom, doing everything. So I walked on it for a month and a half, and then finally got to the hospital for x-rays, and they were like, yeah, you're going to be lame, like you're going to limp for the rest of your life if you don't do the surgery, and you're coming in tomorrow for it, kind of thing. So it's been my weakness. This left foot of mine has been in pain, and I've been, I had to go through 2 surgeries for it, and it's really kind of been that weak spot for me the past couple of years. But I've been exercising 15, 20 minutes a day for the past year. And now I'm at a point where it still hurts a little bit, but I can walk without limping or struggling, or having to walk slowly. I can jump if I need to. I can run if I need to. And the pain is still there so minimally that I don't really give it any thought anymore. So it actually became this analogy that I didn't even, when I gave that other one about the ankle, like I realized, like, hey, that's actually my analogy. It's true, right? Like that's the same with the inner scars and the inner wounds, is that you slowly work on it through over time, and it stays, and if you really want to poke at it, it'll hurt, but you can also learn to walk and run again, with it. And so, yeah.
Oh, I love that. That's such a great analogy. It's so perfect because, yeah, it's like I believe like a miracle is a shift in perception. So in this work, we're
Mhm.
just learning to see what we went through and its impact on us differently,
Right.
with the awareness that, like, yes, it's never going to go away, but now I can learn how to be with it in a way that it serves me and fuels into my courage and my strength, knowing like if I survive that, I can survive anything.
Yeah.
And also like learning how to like relate with things differently, because like you said, that inner scarring or that wound, it's like it's not something that we're trying to fix, get rid of, eliminate for good. Rather, we're like, okay, now I can learn how to live with it peacefully and then
Right.
leverage it in the best way that I know how. So now, because I went through this, like what you just said, I can hold
That's right.
other people in this experience and give them insight and perspective shifts and pointers on how they could recover better. And I have a deeper compassion for these certain kinds of events. So then I can also be that beacon of love for humans that think no one understands them, and that like that no one can really ultimately be there for them. And then we can, like in our
That's
personal
it.
lives and elsewhere.
That's it. And it's the compassionate. I think it also, that kind of work helps bring us more compassion for ourselves as well. I think, like, as we heal others, as we support others in healing, it continues to feed back into us and help us with our own healing, because sometimes you can make your own realizations about something you've been working on yourself, just from your interactions with your clients, right? Or from people that you're working with. But you said, so, the Mastering Human, I love the title of that program. So of your approach. So explain the title itself, the Mastering Human. Like, where did you come up with that, and how does that apply to what you're doing?
Totally. I mean, back when I first started this line of work, I really focused so much more on like past life regression, ancestral healing, and much more of like the woo, in terms of like all those things really do impact us in the now. However, like the realization that I came to is just like, actually there's just like enough to deal with in this present lifetime. And if
Right.
we're manifesting as humans, for the human experience, why not tend to that?
Yeah.
And like, especially like the more I learned about our nervous systems and the more I learned about neurology and just kind of like what it means to be alive in the now, the more I'm like, okay, there's plenty of work to be done here, and I might as well focus on real-time experiences of people, what they had endured, and just this glimpse of existence versus continuously spending so much time in other fields. And ultimately, I believe that self-mastery is all about mastering the human condition. Right. And learning how to dance within it and leveraging it and helping it basically serve our ultimate purpose, which is evolution, like personal evolution. Like if life is just life university and we're just here to learn, and absolutely every experience can be used to expand our awareness and our consciousness, then why not pursue that exactly?
And, you know, while you were speaking, I had kind of a like a ding ding moment of, you know, the woo woo side of things, you know, the spirituality, the past life regression, the energy work, all of that is, I find, and I'm speaking from my own experience and maybe even from other people that I've spoken to, is, you know, when we start on the journey to healing, we tend to sometimes, we go through that phase of wanting to really dive deep into the spiritual, the 5D, the past lives, all of that. And then sometimes you come to a point where you're asking yourself, where is it really taking you? Because it almost brings you to a wall, because in this physical experience, there's only so far you can go with it. For most people, some people are so highly in tune, they really can go further. But for a lot of us, there's a barrier, right? That just at a certain point, it's kind of like, okay, now what do I do with this? And I think that what you said about, you know, applying it to the here and now, if you think about all of like the mission of evolving our spirit, right? And ascending to source. And if you know, talk about soul contracts, and when we're talking about past lives and coming back and the purpose of evolving our souls, then it almost makes sense that the best way to do that work is to apply it in the here and now. It's always good to have the awareness and the connection, you know, with the higher self and the spiritual and and all of that area of self growth, personal growth. But I think the real weight of the work is in, like you say, mastering human. It's in the understanding the neuro wiring, in being present in our bodies. Like I know for me, a lot of healing and a lot of the grounding, it's with my body. So for me, meditation isn't meditation. Like I have a very hard time in kind of the, you know, sitting for an hour in meditation. For me, meditation is body scanning. So that's the best way that I actually can connect to my body and clear my mind and attain that nervous system regulation from the dysregulation. You know, all of those things are achieved when I connect with my body, and less so for me when I'm connecting only through my mind, right? So it makes sense that all of this process that a lot of us are seeking to go through in our healing is tied into making it focus on the here and now in the physical world, you know, because the physical world is a reflection of the spiritual world. So that's how we apply the work. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Does that reflect? Yeah.
That's exactly it. And most of the time, if we've been traumatized, we spend our entire lives living in our head, escaping what's right in front of us, escaping feeling, because we just don't learn how to hold pain or emotionally regulate ourselves or have emotional intelligence. So we're like, oh, that's unbearable. I don't want to spend time there. And then we're taught that it's unproductive. You know, and then it's like, you know what I mean? We end up just perpetuating self-avoidance and self-abandonment. And that is actually like the root to all of our current day pain. So yeah, I think that's kind of.
I agree. Yeah. And even those of us who, like, there's the ones who we escape through negative, you know, destructive habits, but then there are those of us who escape just by keeping busy. So you can be busy and you can like not drink, not smoke, not do any of those addictive habits, but you keep yourself so busy with tasks or work or family, you know, that you don't give yourself 5 minutes to sit down quietly, at all. You're still avoiding, you're still pushing away who you are and your own feelings, and you're still avoiding dealing with yourself.
Yes, I had a huge breakthrough with that, like personally, because I got into this spirituality game such a long time ago, and I didn't realize until so much later that I was just using spirituality for escapism the entire time, because like I wasn't so fully, like I knew that I was using the meditation, the yoga, the whatever, all for like relief. And I
Right.
thought just by like focusing on something that made me feel good, or doing
Yeah.
plenty of like certain kind of meditations, visualizations, blah, 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 like I felt that healing was just getting away from pain. Like that was
Right.
literally my basic definition. I was like, I must be healing because when I do these things, I feel good. And everyone
Yeah.
tells me that there is a lasting effect, and that's what I'm seeking. Like I just don't want to be miserable anymore, when like actually true healing is the complete opposite. It's like you go deeper into your pain, so you build the bandwidth to experience challenge and the harder aspects of the human experience. So then when you organically go through other turmoil in your life, which we will, we can actually be there, move through it with grace, and not disassociate again and then suppress and then deal with all the consequences, poopy consequences of that later.
That it's amazing, because I think you've just highlighted for me, even in it's either in the Jaguar medicine chapter, or the other chapter that I wrote for the other multi-author book that I did, Your Story's Not Over, where I wrote, it's true, I was on this healing journey, right? And I was doing the resting time and the time for myself, and I was like dating myself, right? So I would take myself out for lunches and dinners and things like that. And I remember writing in it that, it still wasn't helping. Right. And I think you've just hit exactly on it, because you're doing it because you think this is what you're supposed to do because it helps you. And it is part of the process, right? But it's not the whole process. It's a section of all the layers of healing, right? And when you can face yourself, and I did move into that second space of understanding that, that's where I got the name even of my business, of Phoenix Rising, because you're sitting in the fire of facing your pain and your feelings, and the fire burns. It burns you so badly, right? And it hurts, but at the same time, it also helps slough away what isn't necessary. It sloughs away what's damaging you, and then remolds you so you can rise stronger, newer, with a different perspective. And that you put into a nutshell, what I saw as my like 6-year journey. You put it into a nutshell with what you said. And it's true, because I've even had some clients that I've spoken to have said, and people have said that, I'm doing the meditation and I don't understand. I'm not feeling better. I feel better for 5 minutes and it doesn't work. And what you said takes it to the next step, which is, okay, so you're doing the meditation. Great. Now, what are you doing to connect with your feelings? Or now what are you doing to address what's going on inside and what the wound is? Because it's not the whole treatment or cure or process. The word is a better word, process.
Totally, like meditation was supposed to not like take you out of what is, it's supposed to take you deeper into it.
Yes.
It's supposed to, like, that body scan is like the ultimate form of meditation. I think we've just been miseducated,
Right.
and
Yep.
told that meditation is like keep focusing on clearing all the thoughts, having a blank state, blah, 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 when really you're supposed to notice what's there and be like,
Yes.
oh, this is revealing to me some inner
Yes.
mechanics of my mind that aren't serving me. Now I can address this through the other tools so they no longer have reign over my life, versus like, ooh, erase, erase,
Yeah.
erase. Oh, I should be
Oh,
more peaceful.
perfectly put. Perfectly put. That really addresses a huge element in the healing world that I think isn't talked about, right? And then you feel bad because you can't clear your mind enough to meditate. And then you're like, oh, why can't I meditate? And it's not working. And so I think you're really probably even putting a lot of people at ease by acknowledging that the meditation process in itself needs to be a deeper more connected to body, and not the process, like you say, of just erase, erase, erase. That's not going to take you through your down the path that you need to go.
Right? It's just like literally like we're like, I'm sitting down to meditate, whether that's like that body scan or just like literally sitting there and seeing like what kind of thoughts are like rolling around. It's just like, this is for the purpose of creating insight, so I know what to either process in the moment, what emotions I didn't end up feeling that I still need to, or like what kind of negative beliefs or thought patterns are still running the show. Because now that I'm like taking a step back and giving them center stage by not like focusing on anything else, I can become aware of like, oh, that's what's actually like, that's that shitty dialogue that keeps me feeling like I can't succeed, or pushes me to be such a perfectionist that I burn out all the time, or like, wow, I really must hate my, like, this gives me perspective that I really don't love myself. So where is that actually coming from? And then we go on to like do the inner work and like unpack it further through whatever tools we have.
It's really such a beautiful process. I have to say, every time I speak to a different healer and a different coach in the industry with their approach to it, it's so amazing to me the way that we're put together, right? And the way that we can learn to understand ourselves. Like, that's part of who I am. I always want to know. I need to understand. And so watching those processes and learning different ways of getting there is really so fascinating to me, because also different things may work for different people too, right? The different vessel or the different, vehicle might appeal to different people in different ways. So it's really also nice to hear an approach that has the woo and the practicality and the biology, right? It incorporates everything all together in it. So it's really comprehensive.
Totally. I so believe different healing for different seasons, like different medicine for different things. Like I've outgrown and grown through so many different healing modalities to arrive here. And maybe this isn't the end either. Like I had no idea that I would have such a body-based inner child trauma focused practice until, it came to be a few years ago. Before it was completely different direction, completely different purpose, all of course within the realm of healing, but I was just in a totally different place and was so in conviction of totally different things. So I feel like we're constantly like evolving in what we need based on who we are and what would be most accessible in that moment to create the change that we desire.
Right. And that's a reflection of the human experience, right? As we continue to grow, different modalities appeal to us or work, or speak to us in different ways. And that's okay. And that's where the compassion comes in, and the grace of knowing like, this is where I am now. So this is what works for me now. And that's where I was then. And that's what worked then. And it had its place. And that's wonderful, because it has helped me come to be where I am now. And it's making me think of, as we're talking, it continues to stay in my head. So I'm going to bring it up if that's okay with you. Our little our brief conversation before last week about Chiron and the wounded healer in astrology, which is something that it's a strong representation for both of us in our charts. And for those of us who follow astrology, Chiron is a small star, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Or an asteroid, yeah.
Or an asteroid, right? So, and is named after a personage or a god in Greek mythology. Chiron was a centaur who was, well-known warrior and became a healer after he himself was wounded. And so he's known as the wounded healer. So it's kind of a bit of a theme of what we've been talking about, in knowing we've gone through our own traumas and challenges in our lives and have worked to heal ourselves, so that then we can come to heal others. So I don't know if there's something you want to speak to around Chiron, and how it relates to us in this industry. I keep saying the word industry and I don't like it. In this practice.
Totally. Yes. I do a lot of shadow astrology for my clients as well. So like when they don't know where to get started, I can just generate a report on a few shadow elements of your chart, which I could speak into. Chiron is one of them. And then that gives us like some guideposts as to what we could start looking at first. And oftentimes it illuminates plenty. It's like I've never had it where I've shared this report and every single element of it resonated. And basically, like, based on, like what sign it's in and what house it's in, like the house being like what area of your life, and the sign what kind of themes your wounding will pertain to, gives us like plenty to work with in terms of like what can we start contemplating or seeing if you know, these things have been prevalent in your life. And like, just like trauma is forever. What we get to heal is how we sit with that trauma and then use it to serve us. Same with Chiron, because he was never able to heal his own wound.
Right.
But because he was so diligent at like pursuing healing, blah, 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 he was then able to extend that outward and serve so many other people in that. So like, Chiron is all about like, if you have a business, then it'll illuminate like what are all the stuff that you're meant to work through that'll be your scarring forever, but you're going to get so good at addressing it that you're going to be a master healer in that regard with other humans. Or if it's in your personal life, this is what you're going to become extremely skillful in, because you focus on it so much that you can share that with your friends, your family, or become a living example of overcoming certain insecurities, tendencies, and wounding, and in turn be like that beacon for other people.
It becomes your own wound becomes the vessel through which you can support and heal others, which is, it's really poetic in a way. You know, it's really beautiful, but yeah, it's incredible. It's always amazing to me, all of these tie-ins, how everything relates and connects. So I can't believe that we've already been speaking for almost an hour. It's such a joy to speak to you, and you're so well spoken. Like the way that you express everything that you do is just so it's clear and it's impactful, and I really give you a lot of credit for it. I have a lot of admiration for people who can express themselves so well and so effectively. My throat chakra and communication is one of my overarching thematic challenges in my life. Much as been involved in reading in the book world and writing for so much of my life, and now doing, video and podcasts and all of that, I think it's because I need to address that challenge. So when I hear someone who is so well spoken, I really have a great admiration for it. So it's really a pleasure listening to how you express and and the processes you use through your work.
Thank you so much. And I think it's just a byproduct of how badly I needed to receive this information in a digestible manner. So it could land in the practical and the pragmatic, just like we've been talking about the whole time. Again, the premise of mastering human. Like I wanted this to be like anyone can pick it up and apply it to themselves, and they don't need to be a master in, trauma or somatics or neurology or whatever. Like we can receive it in a way that makes sense, then it's applicable, and then we can go about and use it as like a sustainable tool for the rest of our lives. And I think you're so amazing at being so clear as well. Like, I just love that. I know you have a way with words, and it's so sweet.
Thank you. I try very hard. So tell me and the audience about the new program you have coming up and how we can find you out there. Yeah,
absolutely. So I am currently launching a really intimate group container called Force to Be Reckoned With. That begins on April 18th. And that is going to be a journey of multiple initiations, 8 to be exact, that will come through as immersive trainings on basically the premise of everything we spoke about today. Basically becoming your own best caregiver, reparenting yourself, and doing the inner child work necessary in order to step into limitless living and deep self-empowerment, where you recognize your personal potency and constantly pursue a life where excellence is basically the focus. And tons of theme. Okay, so yeah. 8 modules, 8 mentorship calls to support you with implementing the tools and unpacking your stuff. And then multiple labs where you get to really dive into certain routine hacks and self-regulation hacks that I've learned over my career to help you, again, have like a laundry list of things you can apply during challenging times in your life and continue on this path of self-mastery and self-realization. So that begins on April 18th. So there will be plenty of self-study, plenty of assignments to really integrate what you're learning, and then also a ton of support where you can share some of your past experiences and receive perspective shifting knowledge and help in terms of overcoming some barriers that have become present in your life due to your past trauma. So that's what's coming up very soon. I foresee it having 12 women, and it's just going to be an accelerator, like a catalyst experience to illuminate what kind of stuff you may have, how to go about it, and equip you with the tools and the know-how how to proceed moving forward so it no longer rules your life. And then otherwise, I have a few spots opening up in my private mentorship, which is going to be like deep diving all the way through, illuminating all of your tendencies, all of your addictions, all of your habits, understanding where they came from, and doing the deep digging to start dismantling the stuff that keeps you locked into those patterns.
I get the intense feeling that working with you is transformative. Even our conversation is there. I feel like we've just really, as much as we've spoken and dived deep, this is just the surface of what's possible in working with you, because on a one-to-one basis or in a container, I have no doubt that you can really unpack so much and really get to the heart of everything with you. So it sounds so exciting. I have no doubt you'll get your 12 women and probably a waiting list too. So where can they find you? On Facebook, Instagram?
Absolutely. I mostly live in my Facebook group, which is called Mastering Human the Inner Work Haven. Okay. And there's just like plenty of mini trainings there, podcasts, other helpful educational content to help you on your journey of personal evolution. And then I also have just the formal page, Mastering Human, on Facebook. And then on Instagram, it's also mastering.human.
So all those links will be in the show notes as well. So if you didn't catch it while we were saying it, you'll be able to find it and link through in the show notes for either the show on Everyday Woman TV. I'll be posting this episode, Everyday Woman TV, as well as my YouTube and Rumble channels under Phoenix Rising Mentoring. And I've got the Soul Speak podcast that's available on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor. So all the links will be out, and I know you'll share them. And so I'm sure that people will get every opportunity to listen in and to find you. And so one last thing I want to ask you about is I'm compiling a book list of recommended reading from my guests from each episode. And the list will be posted on my page at bookshop.org under Phoenix Rising Mentoring. So do you have a book to recommend to our friends who are watching and listening?
Ooh, yes, definitely. When the Body Says No.
Okay. Oh, isn't that, you're going to and when you remind me his name, I'm going to be like, that's it. But I forget the name right now.
Oh yeah, definitely. His name is Gabor Mate.
That's it. I knew there was a M-A-T in there somewhere. When the Body Says, yes, he's very well known in the trauma. He's one of the kind of biggest voices and teachers in terms of trauma and trauma body connection and how it shows up in I have to read it. It's definitely on my list, When the Body Says No. So that will also be linked in the show notes, and you'll be able to find that in my book list as well on bookshop.org. Thank you so much, Maryna. This is such a pleasure. It's such a pleasure to speak to you. I love engaging with you. I hope to have you on again. And I thank you for being here. Everyone can find me on phoenixrisingmentoring.com, Facebook and Instagram, Talya Pardo Phoenix Rising, and YouTube and Rumble. It's the same theme, Phoenix Rising Mentoring. If you just type in those words somewhere, you'll find me. I'm also on Locals, phoenixrisingmentoring.locals.com, which is a fun community to be on. And again, Maryna, thank you so much for being here. It's really been a pleasure to talk with you, and I look forward to another opportunity maybe one day.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, always a pleasure to speak with you too and be on the same wavelength and share our experiences.
Thank you so much. Good luck with your program.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for listening and watching.